there's a lot of subjects right now that we're at one point or another unfamiliar with, right? Whether it was dating, whether it was living on your own, whether it was college, whether it was your first job, there's something that you weren't too sure about. But you'll notice that after a while, after a minute, you get warmed up, and now you're comfortable with it. I had a subscriber off YouTube. His name's Ali. He found me off YouTube. And he reached out to me to the email help@salesremastered.com. And he shared some of his own personal background of, he's well decorated with college experience, understands the engineering of making a loan, and understands the loan programs, right? Understands the underwriting and the matrices and all that good stuff, which ironic part is that's actually one of the hardest parts to learn about being a loan officer, is the guidelines, the intricacies, right? The nuances of certain programs. Like if you have this, then you can go here, but if you have this, then you can't go there anymore. Stuff like that. And so this creates anxiety, and that's what I want to talk about in this episode. Is when you're in Ali's position, when you're new to the industry, you're new to that line of work, and you ultimately are, you just don't know what's ahead. You have no idea what's going to happen. And Ali was sharing with me that it's hard to relate to his prospects because he's never been in that position before. He's never been in the position of some of the financial situations that his prospects are in right now. And so he's having trouble on figuring out how to make a conversation, figuring out what questions to ask, what's most impactful. And so in this video, I really want to help Ali, and also you, if you're experiencing this, if this is what you're going through. Maybe you're new and you're excited, but at the same time you're scared. And I'm not saying Ali's scared or anything like that. What I'm saying is that there's the anxiety, there's the fear of just not knowing what's ahead, and ultimately sounding dumb, right? And being rejected, or not necessarily mingling. And it's very awkward whenever you have a conversation like this. It's like being kind of like when you're with a friend of a friend, right? Like you're with your friend and then their friend, right? Or her friend. And your friend, your common friend that both of you guys know, for whatever reason leaves the area, and now you're stuck with this other person where you're just like right? So how long you known so and so, and then it gets a little awkward, right? Because you guys just don't vibe. You're not knowing each other. You don't know where each other's from. And on top of that, we're raised by society to not talk to strangers, right? And to kind of keep to yourself. And unless you're like one of those extroverts, which I'm not, but if you're like an extrovert where it's easy for you to talk, then that's probably natural. However, if you're more internal, like an introvert, right? Like you feel most confident when you're talking about something you understand. And it comes out, like the life comes out of you, the passion comes out of you. It's because you know about the topic. And so if you're new, it's kind of hard to know about the topic, especially if you've never even experienced most of the things that you talk about. And so here's a couple hacks that's going to help you if you're feeling like this, or if you're in the same boat as Ali. And it's really, no one knows, right? Like no one really knows in terms of your prospects. No one really knows what the process is. If you consider this, that or you have an idea, we have an idea, because this is what we do for work. But it's kind of like, if you ever get your oil changed from, like, let's say a place called like Jiffy Lube or whatever, or maybe even your own dealership, right? When they take your car, when they go into the garage with your car, there's a list of actions that need to be done. There's like a checklist, right? But as a consumer, when we go there, we don't know, right? We don't know what to expect. We don't know what they do behind the scenes. And so as a consumer, because we don't know about it, we're not worried about it. Make sense? And so, in other words, how this applies to Ali and anyone in the situation where you're kind of nervous because you don't want to ask the wrong question, or you don't want to sound dumb, or you don't know how to, interact. It's really understanding that they don't know how to interact either. They don't know what's going on either. And so use that as your advantage. But more importantly, also use the advantage that they don't know you. So they don't know your experience. They don't know how good you are at certain things. They don't know if whatever you say, whatever questions you say are incorrect, because it's just supposed to be a conversation. And so really the workaround or the solution to it is just repetition, meaning that it's new right now, and you're not going to expect, you're not going to know what to expect because you haven't gone through it yet. And so when you go through it once, then you kind of understand what it's like to go through the sequence. And the reality is that there are certain pieces of information that you can collect and gather to focus them on something else, maybe something that they want to talk about that you're not too familiar with. And at the end of the day, what we do as consultants, as loan officers, is we're trying to find a solution. But how do you know what the problem is if you've never experienced a problem yourself? And in all reality, the common issue or the common problem is budget, right? So if you get the basic idea, like you don't even have to be a homeowner. Like you could just your own budget, right? Like every single month you have X amount of dollars to pay for X amount of bills. And these bills all they do is just go up. And so it becomes more expensive when you become a homeowner. It becomes more expensive when you have kids and family. But sometimes you don't know what that's like, right? Unless you refer to maybe how your parents act or how your friends' parents act, or just general, right? Just general common sense. And so if something comes up where a prospect wants to talk about something you're not too familiar with, right? Because there's the anxiety of us asking a question and then we'll overanalyze it to where we become paralyzed. We overanalyze the question to where we're too caught up with what we should say. It's kind of like on you being on a first date. You're so nervous about being attractable, I guess that's the word, being attractive, that you're not even showing your real self. Does that make sense? So you're like at a job interview, right? And I use this reference in another video. There's a specific energy when you go into a job interview that you're obviously, you're on your best, you're on your tip, you're on your toes. And so you're expecting certain things. You have to exude a certain amount of confidence. And so it's not like, after that interview, when you go into the job in itself, you may not necessarily be the same enthusiastic person. You're just focused, but you knew you had to act a certain way in that job interview. And so, but there should be anxiety in there too, and most job interviews are, because you don't know what they're going to talk about. You don't know what they're going to say, right? But what you do know, though, is what you do know. And so if you knew through your experience, because you went through a couple calls, that, especially after looking at the content Sales Remastered, that this particular sales script, which is available at SalesRemastered.com, works very well with opening them up. And really that's what your main focus is take control of the conversation first. Now the key thing is, though, is when you take control of the conversation, you don't ask for control, right? Like, hey, can I control the conversation? Same reason why you don't ask, like, hey, can I ask you a few questions, or can we do an application, or is it okay if I move forward? You assume that, because again, they don't know what's to come. They don't know what's next. And so through your conversation, if you discover that they really do need, X, Y, and Z to happen, and you're the only person that can make X, Y, and Z happen, then this puts you at an undistinct advantage where you're able to control an emotion that they have, which is desire, right? Like envy. They're envious to have the same results of others that you help. And so the key thing is, though, is that when you go about it and you're worried whether or not the prospect's not going to like your questions or not like you, at the end of the day, they don't need to like you. You don't need to like them. But at the end of the day, when you guys connect, or when you connect with your prospect, the only objective is let me make sure I can help you first, right? But there's nicer ways to say it. You don't want to sound like like a douche, right? Like, all right, well, you know, before we even get into it, let me see if you earn my time. Or, you know, and then you sound like a prospect, right? I don't got time for this. Let me make sure that you should be on the phone with me. You know, you got to be cordial. You know, again, it's like how you would switch up when you go into a job interview, or how you would switch up if you went to, you know, your friend's house to have dinner with their parents, or how you would switch up if you went to dinner with your parents versus dinner with your best friend, right? You just switch up. And so whenever you're having a conversation with a prospect, I need you to make believe you're having lunch with your friend's friend. And what this does is it's a quick hack to kind of put you in this mind frame, put you in this train of thought where you should be comfortable. You are the pro, regardless if you experience any of the financial situations that your prospects are talking about. The bottom line is all prospects go through those financial situations. And as you experience them, regardless if you mess up, pay attention to it and learn from it. And so the only real error that you can make is not walk away from every single experience that much stronger. And so if you're walking away from every defeat without taking away that from that defeat the experience you need to win, then every experience will be just a defeat until you choose to adapt and make it work. Meaning until you choose to have enough humility to say, man, I fucked up right there. You know, and actually revise it and be eager to go into the situation again. So you're making mental note, like, man, if I ever go down this path again and I get caught up with this objection, or I get caught up in this conversation, at least now I know what I'm talking about, right? There's a lot of subjects right now that we're at one point or another unfamiliar with, right? Whether it was dating, whether it was living on your own, whether it was college, whether it was your first job, there's something that you weren't too sure about. But you'll notice that after a while, after a minute, you get warmed up, and now you're comfortable with it. And so the same thing applies. So I hope that this helps you. And I really do want us to realize that it's just cyclical. It happens all the time. You know, there's only so many scenarios, only so many objections, only so many situations that will leave you prone for failure. And the faster you fail, the faster you go through these hard times, the better you'll be, the better off you'll be, the more experienced you'll be. I hope this video helps. If it's your first time watching Sales Remastered, please consider subscribing, hitting the bell, and that way you're alerted of any new content that comes up. And you'll be able to at least see the title of the video so you can decipher if that's something that will bring you value that day. I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. And if you're on those pages watching this video, please always double tap, hit that thumbs up, and do me a solid and comment. Helps me look cool, and it helps me play these algorithms so I can share with everyone else who needs to see this brand. On that note, share this video link with someone who needs to see it, someone who can benefit from seeing it. And I'll see you on the next video.